All right, welcome everyone to the final plenary of the day. It's great to see so many people in the room. I know it's been a really long day, but I hope that for the next hour and a half, we'll be able to entertain you and keep you awake and get you in a party spirit ready for the poster session later. My name is Louise Bezuidenhout. I'm going to be chairing this session, and we've got a huge number of very experienced speakers who are going to talk to us about the community adoption of RDA outputs. This is a joint session with a number of different groups. So we've got a diversity of opinions coming through, and we hope we'll have some discussion through the audience. So what is the session actually about? Obviously, it's about the outputs. The outputs are really one of the fundamental ways that the RDA shares the expertise and shares all the great work that's been going on in the working groups. And what we'd like to do is see these outputs integrated into institutions, integrated into policy, and integrated into practice. And the main way of doing it at the moment, obviously, is publishing the outputs, but there is often some discussion about whether there is more that we can be doing to get these outputs really embedded into the places that they need to be. So obviously, RDA is 10 years old this year, and it's time to take stock, try to think about what we're doing with the outputs and what we could be doing a little bit better. What have we learned from the adoption stories that we already have? Are there avenues to impact that we're overlooking? How can we pool expertise and develop implementation guidance? And how can we ensure that RDA outputs are really having the global impact that we hope? So in order to answer these probing questions, we've got quite a lot going on. So we're going to start with an overview of the RDA strategic plan by the co-chairs of the council, Lee and Jill. Then we're going to hear from Wim about the RDA outputs and where to find them. And then we're going to hear from Shelley about the organizational assembly and what the OA is doing to start promoting outputs within the member community. Then we're going to shift focus a little bit, and we're going to hear from some adoption stories. So we've got Dan, Magda, Lawrence, and Raphael, who are going to talk a little bit about their own experiences. And then we're going to return to our panel. We're going to have, sorry, not Lee this time. We're going to have Jill, Wim, Shelley, and Mark come up and just have a bit more broader discussion about the outputs. So we're on quite a tight schedule. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Lee and Jill up. I'm going to introduce them first, though, because that is the way of things. So Lee is the Director of the Research Data Management at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. In his role, Lee oversees national research data management teams at the Alliance, as well as service provision and development through partnerships with a variety of Canadian institutions and organizations. Lee previously held the position of Manager for RDM Platforms and Services at the Alliance, and worked as a research consultant for data management at Atlantic Canada with the ACE-NET, and as part of the data management team for the Marine Environmental Observation, Prediction and Response Network, supporting researchers working with oceans data. Jill is the university librarian at the University of Western Australia since 2014. She has over 20 years experience in the higher education sector and is a principal fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Jill is professionally active nationally and internationally, and is currently the co-chair of the Research Data Alliance Council with Lee. So without further ado, over to you.
So thanks very much, Louise, and welcome everyone, and thanks for coming along to this session. So for this part of the session, we're not going to be talking specifically about outputs and adoption, although it is a key part of our strategy. What we will be doing is sharing with you the work that the Research Data Alliance Council has been doing over the last 12 months, really to set a new future direction for the Research Data Alliance. As Louise said, Lee and I are the current co-chairs of the Research Data Alliance, but I did just want to acknowledge all of Council who've been involved in the plan. And I especially wanted to acknowledge Ingrid Dillo. I know she just looked down, so I'm sure she's very keen on being acknowledged, but Ingrid has been the previous co-chair of the Research Data Alliance. I had a great pleasure of working with Ingrid, and she really was very fundamental in the strategy of the current strategy of the organisation. And I just wanted to thank Ingrid publicly, and I wanted us to give her a round of applause. Thank you, Ingrid. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of background and some acknowledgements, because this is actually the 5th strategic plan for the Research Data Alliance. And it's really terrific that from the very beginning, the Research Data Alliance has had a really strong strategic approach. And it's a real credit to the previous and current council members for that robust approach. So thank you to them. For this particular strategy, we've decided to take a very collaborative approach. There's been a number of different ways that we've consulted with the community. For those of you who might be new to the RDA, the council is made up of elected members from the community like Lee and I, as well as some of our representatives from our key governance bodies, the Technical Advisory, Regional Assembly and Organisational Assembly boards. So we've been really consulting with council together with the RDA Secretariat about what is the next direction for the organisation. But we've also sought feedback from the community, and if you're at P20 in Gothenburg, you might remember the rainbow wall we had where we sought feedback about what are your ideas of where we should be taking the organisation. And we had about 100 ideas that we collected from the community. And over the last couple of months, council has been considering that feedback, and we've now distilled that into a pre-final draft, which is available on the RDA website now for your feedback. And Lee will share how you can give us feedback on the next stage. At this point, I just wanted also to thank Connie Clare. I can't see her. Connie, oh, there you are. So Connie is the Research Data Alliance Community Engagement Manager. She's played a really key role in coming up with the consultation method for the strategy and has provided great support to council. So I just wanted to publicly thank Connie as well. Thank you, Connie. So what we intend to do is to gather some more feedback from the community at this meeting, and then publish the final version of the strategy by the end of the year. So before we get on to the strategy, I thought it was quite important to pause and reflect on the success of the Research Data Alliance. And when you look at this slide, it's quite incredible the growth that we've seen in the organisation. Council have considered the vision, mission and the 6 guiding principles that we have in the current strategy, and we don't feel that there's any need to change those. They're really robust and they will continue. But there are some new directions that we plan to take the organisation in, and Lee will speak to those in a minute. I think also it's important to acknowledge that much has been achieved under the current strategy. And as part of the pre-final version, you'll see that there's a section on what we've achieved under our previous strategic pillars, the 3 Ps, people, process and products. And there's been a huge amount of work. These are just some of the highlights that have been achieved under the current plan. And you can read about those. But I did want to acknowledge the RDA Secretariat and especially Hilary Hanaho, who I know is here somewhere. Hilary has worked tirelessly and provided much leadership to these achievements. So again, I wanted us to give Hilary a round of applause and thanks. So with that, I'll now hand over to Lee Wilson, who will cover the content of the plan.
Thanks, Jill. Okay. Excellent. All right. Over the next 5 years, the strategy that you're seeing outlined on the screen will focus on 4 main strategic themes. These are globalize or ensure that RDA is a truly global organization, sustain, which is focusing on securing organizational stability, empower, which is about fostering leadership for the future, and to innovate, which is about creating impact in the global data landscape. So as you'll notice from Jill's slide, a lot of what we're doing with the new strategy is very much a continuation of the work that RDA has been doing over the past 10 years. particularly in the globalize and sustain pillars, because of course we are a global organization, and organizational sustainability has always been and will remain a key priority. But empower and innovate are sort of a couple of areas where we are looking to continue to develop and grow as an organization. So I'll now walk you through each of these in a little bit more detail, starting with globalize. So the two main strategic areas of focus for this pillar are about building and maintaining capacity in global areas and consolidating and expanding regional engagement. So for the first, we want to be thinking about increasing RDA engagement in the Global South, collaborating with global projects and initiatives, and encouraging multilingualism within all RDA activities. In order to consolidate and expand regional engagement, we will be supporting, maintaining, and innovating existing regional partnerships and relationships, as well as working to engage with new regions. In terms of sustain, over the next 5 years, we aim to promote sustainability by providing coordination for our working and interest groups, ensuring that RDA outputs and recommendations remain current and relevant, and continuing to develop RDA staff expertise and knowledge. In order to optimize processes for financial stability, we will further diversify funding sources and expand relationships that we have with funders, ministries, national governing bodies, as well as other stakeholders in order to communicating the value of RDA within these contexts. So now into one of the sort of newer areas of focus, empower. In order to foster leadership for the future, we will support leadership in education and training by raising awareness of and advocating for the adoption of resources and training opportunities where it's appropriate to do so, and also explore collaborations between RDA and higher education institutions to raise awareness of the organization and the work that we do and the working groups. We also want to, as a part of this, encourage and recognize contributions in service from the community, both in terms of work that we're doing in the context of our community and with our working groups, but also participation in governance bodies as a part of RDA, because these are really, part of the core of what allows us to function as an organization. We will also champion progress in RDM practice and policy by raising awareness of the importance of research integrity and sound research practices. And we also want to ensure that, particularly in the context of early researchers, we're establishing a sound basis and skill set for science policy development and the education of the next generation of researchers in these matters. In addition, we will advocate for the importance and implications of policy development and implementation in research data in a global context. And very similar to the Bulletin 3.1, we'll seek to ensure the recognition of best practices in research data management and open research. Coming to our last pillar, finally, we can't ignore the vital importance of innovation and remaining at the forefront of emerging trends in this fast-changing landscape. A major strength of RDA lies in its community, and in this strategy, we'll harness the power of the community to innovate and advocate by demonstrating the value of RDA across a broad range of stakeholders. As well, we want to encourage innovation in emergent trends or themes in RDM, and that could include things like generative AI, high-performance computing, as well as research data management best practices in the context of research software. RDA will also seek to maximize the potential and impact of our outputs and recommendations by engaging in outreach and promotion, as well as measuring impact. In this context, it'll also be important to facilitate conversations around converting RDA recommendations and outputs to standards where appropriate and working with the appropriate standards bodies to do so. And lastly, we'll aim to provide an effective environment for innovation and community growth by mapping, developing, and maintaining the RDA landscape to clarify and potentially identify gaps or overlaps. And in so doing, we'll be reviewing and revising RDA structures and processes as needed to encourage growth and to continue organizational maturity. So that was the 4 pillars of the plan. And as Jill noted, the aim of this strategic plan really is to provide a high-level description of what it is that RDA will be focusing on over the next 5 years. But as you'll notice, the intent really was not to prescribe the how at this stage. So this will be accomplished through 18-month implementation plans, the first of which will be developed in the coming months. And the plan will outline the activities, deliverables, stakeholders, and actors associated with the strategic areas and priorities that I've just described. It'll also include key performance indicators to measure and track progress and success as we move through the years of the strategy. At this stage, if you're interested in providing feedback, we would invite you to scan the QR code provided and complete the online form. And you may also post your thoughts in color-coded Post-it notes by the poster during the poster session, which is next. So we thank you so much for your attention and look forward to, I think, a brief Q&A period where we can answer any questions you might have at this time. Thank you.
Because we're lucky enough to have them coming back for a panel, we're only taking clarification questions at this point. You'll have a chance to quiz them quite seriously in the remaining panel. So next we have Wim Hugo, who is going to be talking to us about RDA outputs and where to find them. Wim is the Chief Technical Officer at DANS, which is part of the Royal Dutch Academy of Sciences. He's active in the fields of certification and assessment, semantic and technical interoperability, and research data infrastructures.
Thank you, Louise. And I've been threatened with severe consequences if I don't stick to time, so try my best. Okay, so RDA has been going for 10 years, as we've just heard, and in that process, they have generated a whole lot of assets, the outputs that we're all familiar with, supplementary materials, but also all kinds of structures, infrastructure groups, and the like. And they have started developing their own vocabulary to describe the things that they're busy with. So in an attempt to leverage all of these assets, we've started working and are happy to present a milestone today in developing software assistance to the RDA community and membership and to the wider research community to potentially leverage all of the work that RDA is doing in a consistent and reproducible way. So on the screen there, we're trying to represent sort of a background concept with all of the things that RDA are involved in, the structures that they've created, the outputs and other resources that they work with and generate. But of course, these things are implicitly linked into a wider ecosystem. One could think of it as links to the linked open data world, to scientific knowledge graphs, to registries of people and things and objects and concepts and so on. So we've been working on creating in the background such a graph database to represent everything that RDA touches and is working on. That graph database serves as the baseline for software application that is still nameless at the current point in time. But in broad terms, one of the main functions would be to assist you, the members of RDA, to publish materials and resources and outputs that you create in the normal course of work in RDA. And you can access this by logging in at the moment with a Google account or an ORCID, or registering in your own right in the application. But of course, if people would like other means of authentication, that's relatively simple to accomplish. And once you are known to the system, you are able to deposit data. We shouldn't really call it data deposit, but rather describing and publishing resources. And as you can see, once you're logged in, we provide functionality so that you can manage your own settings and preferences, but very importantly, track your submissions, because at the moment, the RDA workflow in these publication processes is relatively straightforward. but it might not remain like that in the future. So we make provision for tracking the resources that are being published or annotated through workflow processes. Now, once you are ready to describe and publish a resource, something like an output or supplementary materials in most cases, you're able to provide metadata. That metadata is based on a schema that we have developed looking at what RDA is interested in saying about these resources, together with what schemas such as DataCite and Zenodo, which is the target of some of our publications, require of us. And these applications are completely configurable and open. They are able to support validations to help you to make sure that the metadata meets a minimum standards in respect of completeness and the type of metadata that's provided. And once one is ready to deposit or to publish a resource, towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see that you will be allowed to access the process going further. Sorry, my voice is not cooperating. Okay, now one of the most important things that we've done in this application is to provide comprehensive support for vocabularies and registries. So things such as the ORCID for a researcher or an author or a contributor to a resource, things like tagging with pathways that are prominent in RDA's work nowadays, and also hot off the press, the Global Open Research Commons vocabulary. All of those are integrated into these applications as type ahead, type lookups in vocabularies, so that one can tag these resources with all of the appropriate vocabularies, linked open data references, and links to registries in the broader scientific knowledge graph as required. So I think this is quite an important support aspect of the application. And then once the metadata is provided or during the process, one of course wants to identify potentially files or resources in the web via URLs or persistent identifiers. And that's quite straightforward and standard in many of these applications, but we've also added support for things like file validation and pre-submission processes, microservices that might be needed to further prepare resources before they are published, so that we can integrate workflows to improve the quality of these submissions by invoking services at this point. Now, once things are published, they are of course available in a catalog that's fully searchable. But there are some cool features in these catalogs. Amongst other things, we can represent the facets that you would typically find in a search interface with all kinds of representations, whether it be maps or charts or sliders and all kinds of ways to better visualize the content of the catalog. And we are in the process behind the scenes of transferring and cleaning up all of the resources that are currently available to RDA, in other words, legacy outputs and supplementary materials, so that they can be represented in the catalog. The detail for each of these resources can be of a number of types, but the typical example would be, for instance, that there is some reference to an output on the RDA website, but also a landing page in Zenodo if it was published to Zenodo, or it may have been published elsewhere. So we provide easy links to all of these locations where that output is in one way or another described, together with the basic metadata that's available to us. Now, one of the nice innovations on top of this catalog is the concept of dashboards. So we can take those same facets and represent them in as many pre-configured dashboards as we like. And then once those dashboards are available, you can also use the dashboard to select filters and facets that you want to filter the catalog on. These predefined search results are also capable of being saved and being given names. So it's quite possible for you to build up a portfolio of typical things that you're interested in that you can find as favorite search results and integrate them quite easily also into other applications via API access. So that's just a quick sneak preview of the work that we've been doing. These applications are now ready for testing with groups that are being supported with the RDA Tiger project. So we will test and refine them and assist those groups with publication and annotation of the outputs and supplementary materials and web resources that they are working with. We are also developing in the RDA Tiger project additional guidance and support materials, such as descriptions of the metadata schema, how to publish outputs and other kinds of documentation that may be useful to groups. And then we also envisage engaging with members so that they can validate the accuracy of the data that we've put into these catalogs, because in some cases there is missing data, and in some cases there's some ambivalence in terms of, for argument's sake, the authors or the working groups that were responsible for producing the materials. And then once these tasks are all been completed, we're looking at a production release to open it up to the full membership of RDA. I'm sure there will be many questions. You can find me here at RDA, of course, at any time, and I'm happy to answer and discuss. And I must also give thanks to the team that was involved at DANCE and at the RDA Tiger project that helped us to get to the point where we are today. Thanks very much.
I must say, perfect timing, Vim. Thank you very much. It's amazing how much you can cover in 10 minutes. So next we have Shelley, who is going to be talking to us from an OA perspective. Shelley is the Vice President for the American Geophysical Union Open Science Leadership Program. She and her team work with AGU's members, their organizations, and the broader research community to improve data and digital object practices with the ultimate goal of elevating how research data and software are managed, valued, and made as open as possible. Over to you.
Thanks, everybody. So Louise is the outgoing OA co-chair with me, and incoming, and so let us celebrate that a moment. Louise, hello, hello. Yes, yes. Thank you. And coming in is Gabby Pino from Costa Rica. So if you see Gabby, congratulate her for the exciting moment where she was willing to be the co-chair for OA. What is OA? Oh, not that great button, Shelley. The other great button. Okay. The organizational assembly. So how many times do you get to hear that at RDA? Not only Hillary probably is the one that says, oh, the OA, I'm so excited. The OA is actually really critical. So think about your own affiliation. And do you know if your organization actually joined RDA? So in the middle there, that's the one. So we have, I think, 82 now. And what's super exciting, Lee is so tall, right? And Vim also tall. What's really exciting is this is one of the primary organizations that the Assembly actually has a fee to join, and the funding model for RDA includes that fee to support the work that we do in working groups. So the relationship is critical, and having members of the Organizational Assembly is I think I'm going to come up with the next slide there. It is part of the governance within RDA. So you don't hear about us much, and I'm your other co-chair, but we're pretty important for making sure that the organizations see the value of RDA. They invest in the membership to be part of RDA and that special membership, and supporting all of you as researchers. And most importantly, they are your adopters. The organizations that are interested in research data are truly the adopters for RDA. So these are slides that Hillary shares. You've probably seen this one. You're like, oh, Jan, organizational assembly member, yay, you guys. But no, it's really awesome. So I have the two yellow items there highlighted, assisting in implementation and adoption of RDA recommendations and outputs. That's why we're here at this assembly today. And then the other one, receiving regular updates about the work of RDA. These two pieces for me are the most important part of why I care so much about this organization. The work that comes out of RDA is valuable to the broader community, and we need to make sure the conduit is there so that there's awareness with our organizational assembly members. So we have a monthly meeting. Yes, we do. Some of you have been, if you had a recent recommendation that came out from the RDA process, you would have been invited most likely by Bridget, and Bridget would have reached out to you and said, hey, we'd like to have you give a 10-minute talk. And it looks something like this. This is Christopher. I don't know if you're here. Hi, Christopher from JISC. He came in June and gave us a talk about the national PID strategies. I think these are really important. I think national PID strategies are incredibly important. So the nations in our world that are putting together those strategies and trying to implement them are vital. And you as RDA are helping to feed that. Rosie Hicks is here. She's got the new RAID persistent identifier, and actually embodying what it means, the value of RAID. That's for a persistent identifier for projects. But you know ORCID, you know DOI, you know other persistent identifiers. This recommendation is really important. And if you're a nation that has not yet implemented that, the United States, if you're a nation that has not yet implemented that, it's important for you to read this recommendation. So I really enjoy being the co-chair of the organizational assembly. It's like you and you need to read this recommendation. Okay, no, you and you read it again. So it's really important for people to be members. If you in fact are an organization, you're like, oh snap, I did not know there was an assembly. Oh, you are so welcome, please. And fact is, we do have a fee. Okay. Not every organization has a budget that can accommodate that fee. It's just a reality. We want every organization, no matter what nation you're from, no matter what your situation is, low, middle income, high income country, if you want to become a member of the organizational assembly, you will become a member of the organizational assembly. All you have to do is talk to Hillary Hanaho. She will make sure it happens. There's magic in that woman. She knows how to make things happen. So please, especially for low and middle income countries, we have a special program that we acknowledge that we don't have enough representation. And it's please just talk to Hillary, send me a note, I'll get you hooked up. She takes care of all of that, the processes within the governance for RDA to make that happen. And we are delighted to have you join us. And there's lots of room at the table, lots of room. Many more people can come join us. That is the end for me. So thank you so much for letting me talk about it. And please, if you are interested in having an organizational assembly member as part of your working group in order to support adoption, we're happy to connect you with folks that might be interested in what you're working on in your working groups. We are delighted to do that, and it is our role to do that. So thank you.
That's from a totally unbiased perspective. It's one of the best groups to join. So we have a minute or two if anyone has a clarification question on anything that was spoken about. Anything online with Najla? Yeah, nothing? Okay, well then we'll move on to the second part of the program, which is some adoption stories. So we're going to say thank you to our panel and see you later. Off you go. Just running out of seats here. And we're going to welcome on the next 4 speakers. Where's my fourth speaker? Where's Laurence? There we go. All right, so now we've got four examples of adoption stories. The first is going to be by Dan. So Dan is Chief Scientist at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications and a Research Associate Professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He's interested in policy issues, including citation and credit mechanisms and practices associated with software and data, organization and community practices for collaboration, and career paths for computing researchers. Welcome, Dan.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the FAIR for Research software work that we've done and how it's been adopted up to this point. Just first, it's worth mentioning that this was a group that had 9 co-chairs, which maybe was a record for RDA at that point. And it also was a group that was done under Force 11, RDA, and RISA. So we wanted to actually use all 3 organizations as a way of generating impact from the beginning. The reason we're doing this, and I feel like this is actually worth saying at RDA, is that the FAIR principles themselves were intended to apply to all research objects, but when you look at them in detail, they don't actually. They say data and metadata in them explicitly. They don't say metadata and other objects. And the problem is that the principles are applied through the dataset creators and the repositories. And software can be stored as data, but it's not just data. It's generated in different ways. It uses different repositories. It's stored in different places. And because of that, there's work that's needed to define and implement and adopt FAIR principles for software. And that's the work that we did over 18 months. So there was a lot of work in getting to those outputs, but those were just documents. And I think this is going to be probably the point that we'll make overall. The effort that we had included these 9 co-leads plus 4 additional task force leaders, plus 260 working group members, plus another 233 participants in different activities. So we had lots of people that got involved in this. We had organizational support and awareness again from RDA, RISA, Force 11. We had funding from the Sloan Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. So lots of stuff came together. Willing people and resources led to consensus and documents and publications. And the main output is this RDA 68, FAIR Principles for Research Software, or FAIR RS Principles. So that's great. We did that. We did it on time, which was kind of fun. But then uptake is a completely different story. And in some ways, I think we would say that, that organizations and people build awareness, but we actually need champions in those organizations and those communities to actually make changes. And so the challenge then that we're looking at was, from the beginning, was what kind of organizations do we want to impact? What kind of champions would we be able to potentially get within those organizations? What kind of changes do we want to make in those organizations? And how do champions actually make changes happen? And can we give them evidence that helps them? And we didn't really know the answers at the time that we started. So we tried to be as broad as possible, kind of casting a big net and hoping that some fish happened to be in it at the end. And so we were looking at research performing organizations, research funders, research projects, research infrastructures, research publishers, research repositories and registries, and all of those. And we've had success in some, and I'm just going to kind of give 3 really quick stories about what's happened. So Elixir is one where we've had some nice success. Work towards machine actionable software management plans that happen, where they created a metadata schema, a repository for metadata schema. They did some analysis. They presented that to their community. They presented a draft schema. They had a hands-on workshop to try to see if people could actually work with this. That led to a first metadata schema and some examples of how that could work. This then got added as a use case to the bioschema tools group. The project ended up joining part of NFDI to try to have impact in Germany specifically. And so this group is now currently working to make these machine actionable software management plans aligned with NFDI. And that's been initially presented and published. And there's going to be a mini hackathon to continue onward. So again, in this example, you can see work with projects, with communities, with individual programmers. There's lots of different ways that they're trying to have impact. Second one is the Fair Impact project within EASC, which is delivering a metrics for automated fair software assessment in a disciplinary context soon. And that's going to have 18 metrics that can be used to automate fair software assessment and examples of how they could be implemented in a software social sciences context. So then there's that document, but then there's the implementation part as well. And so they're going to try to extend some existing assessment tools next year. And they want to actually then run these metrics against software in some selected repositories to see, do the metrics seem like they're reasonable? Do some software already meet these metrics? If some, then probably that's great. If zero, then maybe these aren't the right metrics. So another example of what's happening. And then the third and final example that I want to give is the Netherlands eScience Center, a particular research performing organization that has impact across the Netherlands and a bit beyond. They published some SMP guidelines. They updated their SMT template to align with those guidelines. Working with RDA in Australia, they developed a self-assessment tool for fair research software. And then one particular university has guidance for their own researchers. So this has been kind of brought down a level from the national level to a university level as well. So that's all that I wanted to talk about in these examples. I'll just say that as we get into discussion, hopefully in a panel later, I think for all of us, we can probably talk about what's worked and what hasn't worked individually, but I don't think anybody's really done the analysis to understand why has this worked and why hasn't this worked, and what kind of champions work and what kind of evidence do they actually need to convince their management and their organizations. So that's what I'd really like to see us is going from these very specific examples to more general guidance. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan. So next we have Magda, who's a senior librarian at Gdańsk University of Technology in Poland. Since 2019, she is the head of the Scientific and Technological Services, Data Repository Manager, and the leader of the Open Science Competence Center.
Yes, thank you. I have my slides here. Okay, I'm exciting. Sorry, it's really nice to be here. So I was asked to give you some positive examples how I used RDA outputs in the practical way. So I was wondering, and I think I would like to start from the most recent achievements. And personally, it was like a very big challenge for me. I'm not sure if it's working. Okay. That's technology. Still, I don't know how to use it.
Really click
it. Okay, sorry about that. So recently, I'm also a repository manager. So recently, my repository got a certificate, Core Trust Seal, and really, it was impossible without RDA. I could start once upon a time. However, it happened just almost 5 years ago. It was my first plenary in Helsinki, and I was like a newbie at RDA plenaries and all the sessions. And my university just recently that time got a grant for developed infrastructure for a data repository. And we had to do it from scratch because we get funding for develop the infrastructure by ourselves. So I went to RDA plenary and I was like overwhelmed, like so many working groups, interested groups, sessions, like so many people, and Helsinki, beautiful city. And I just started to make contacts, networks. And someone told me about if you would like to develop a very good repository, you have to go, for example, for session about trust repositories, and maybe you in the future you will be able to apply for the Core Trust Seal. And I said, okay. And I went for that session, and I promised to myself that my repository will get the Core Trust Seal. And it happens like 3 weeks ago, so I managed that. Yes, thank you. And also, I will be a reviewer, so I will be review your future applications. Yes, be careful. I will be very strict. I resolve to be very strict. I'm joking. I'm not joking. Yes, so that was the practical way how I use the RDA outputs. I went to the website, I went to the recommendation, I joined the working groups. Another thing, at the same time, we develop our infrastructure. So we had to decide what kind of metadata schema we supposed to use. And because we are developing the institutional repository, we did some mistakes at the beginning. However, we widely used a metadata standards directory. It was really, really great job, the great directory, and it helped me a lot. Another positive output I widely used is everything what is produced by different groups related to data stewardships, trainings, educations, and so on. Recently also I became a co-chair for one of the interested group related to education and trainings. And that's another, I still have problem with that. And that's another very big challenge for me. So almost 5 years ago, I've never even imagined that today I will be standing here on the stand, and I will be talking about how important RDA as an organization, as a network, as a community, website, tools, services is for me and my team. So thank you so much, and big applause for you guys, because you are my colleagues, now my inspiration, and I hope that we will collaborate in the future.
Thank you so much for that. So next we have Laurence, who has a background in fluid mechanics and has been working on building open science policies at the CNRS for 10 years now. She works with the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research at different levels to share work on open science and on sharing and managing research data. She participates through her institution and through the department she works in to EOS governance and to a couple of EOS projects, but also to OpenAir, COAR, Software Heritage, and COARA, and of course the RDA. And she is co-leading the French RDA network with Françoise.
Okay, well, hello everybody. I'm here in a very uncomfortable position, as it was Françoise Genova who was supposed to speak on behalf of this recommendation endorsed example, and because I'm going to speak about this recommendation endorsed, which is something that RDA France has accompanied. So it was the data policy framework for journal and publishers. And it was done by 3 institutions, RPOs, that work on agronomy, food, and environmental science. And they work usually together, and they wanted to harmonize their data frameworks. So they were looking at criteria in order to help them work on this. And they found this output, which they worked on in order that they these criteria can answer their problem. So the output is something that have helped them to work on this, and they managed to have a project that have been funded by the French National Agency for Research, and they called it BRIDGE. And BRIDGE is a word that we usually hear a lot here in RDA, because it's all about having bridges between our institutions and our research matters. And how does RDA France work? RDA France work in the same way as as the RDA, we try to make people meet and together on if there is a question, we organize and facilitate the work of these people together. So this is what has been done. We have organized a workshop in order that Bridge, the three organizations that are working on Bridge, can explain how did they manage to have these criteria and to harmonize their data policies in order that they can work better together. So there have been a strong interest from the audience. A lot of people attended this workshop, and it's still a work going on as we are going to have an output on this. Other people are going, other institutions are going to have an example of what they have done, and they are working together in order to help each other in order to better implement such data schema. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finally, we have Rafael, who works as a research associate at the Sao Paulo State University. He's a founding member and project manager of the Advanced Institute for Artificial Intelligence. He is, very importantly, a co-chair of the CoData RDA Schools for Research Data Science and has been an RDA tab member since 2021.
So thank you, Lou, and also Najla for the invitation. It is always very good to talk about this particular set, actually, the output that comes from a working group that I've been working with since, I don't know, 2017 or 18. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the output produced by the working group on the School of Research Data Science. This is a little bit different from the other stories because it's about the output regarding education and training. Okay, so first of all, I come from Brazil, and just for you to have some sense, Brazil, and I'm pretty sure that most of Latin America is in the scenario of a lack of training on open science in open science related teams, for instance, research data management and FAIR principles. Okay, so just for you to have some idea, the requirement for DMPs have been included and enforced by the biggest funding agents in Brazil since 2018. And still today, we receive a lot of messages from researchers saying, well, I have no idea how to fill a DMP. Okay, so training is a key problem in lower and middle income countries, especially Brazil, Latin America as well. So the SWORDS program, the Schools of Research Data Science, now we call it SWORDS. The SWORDS program was developed to actually cope with this deficiency. Okay, so it focused on early career researchers. It was designed for low and middle income countries. The first school was run in 16. And in Trieste, and we have done the schools on an annual basis. And I'm here to talk about. Okay, so the curriculum is the idea of the curriculum is to give just foundational skills on data science. Okay, it is a broad and shallow curriculum. The idea is not to give very deep knowledge about a specific thing, but it is a 2-week school, so we try to cover as many topics as we can, and it combines skills from software carpentry that will be more technical stuff like how to program, how to do data analysis, how to do, I don't know, data plotting and stuff like that. We also have components of open and responsible research and data management. And at the end of the schools, there is data analysis. There's an important component there that is the usage of cyber infrastructure for doing data analysis as well. So since 2016, we have had 500 students. And what I'm particularly going to speak about is the adoption of the curriculum. The curriculum itself, it became an output for RDA, and we have some success stories. The first one would be the first extra organization that adopted the curriculum was organized. The schools were organized in South Africa. Okay, so the schools were organized by the University of Pretoria, Sadilar, and a few other organizations from South Africa. The first school was in 2020. Okay, it was an in-person school, then pandemics hit us, and we helped them organizing a virtual schools. So the way it goes is they assembled a local committee, and they reuse most of the curriculum and also the materials, because the thing is that if you want people to adopt an output, it's not just saying, well, this is the output. Perhaps giving some examples of how to use that output may be of very much help. Okay, so in our case, being a curriculum for a school, giving away materials is very helpful. It helps a lot speeding up the process. Okay, so we've had 4 editions in South Africa. Then we had 2 other ones that started in 2022 in the US. I know I said that this low and middle income country, but these schools are for minority serving institutions, okay? So that's pretty much on the same scope. If you want some more information regarding the South African schools, you can talk to Lou, and regarding the US, you can talk with Rob Quick, because he's the one that's helping with this. Okay, so the key thing that I want to comment here is that actually having a modular curriculum helped us a lot. Because I mean, it's just, as I said, you give the output and then people, some organizations don't fit exactly the requirements of that output. So letting them tailor that output to their requirements makes a lot of sense. So in our case, it allows us to create schools that are focusing, for instance, in open science and data management, or focusing on the more technical stuff as data analysis or cyber infrastructures and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's what I had to say regarding these outputs. I also have to say thank you to Codata and RDA for supporting this initiative. They have been great so far. Yeah.
Brilliant. So now we have some time for some questions for our panel. Do we have anyone from the audience who would like to? Oh, no, he's coming in the next. We're still doing you guys. Any questions for our panel at this point? Want to hear more about any of the adoption stories? Any deep questions? Yeah, go for it. For those online, it's a large room and a long walk to the microphone.
Hi, but I'd like to say thank you. First of all, they were really great stories. We always love hearing the stories, and we wish we had more effort to also capture these. So I'm grateful as well for organising the panel. Dan, could you talk a little bit more about what you said about, yeah, you could, what is it you would like or would be really helpful? It was a bit about champions and guidance, so I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I know that there are people that have studied basically how organizational change happens. For us as a working group, we didn't really have direct access to that kind of material and those kind of lessons, so we kind of did what we thought seemed right. But I think what would be really useful would be some more structured information in that area, because again, from us, it's kind of obvious to us that we tried to bring people into the process to make them co-chairs because they were interested, and they were often interested because they wanted to do something in their own organization. And in some cases, they had the ability to do that, and in other cases, they didn't necessarily have the ability to do that. Right. So just as an example, I would like my university as a whole to sign up to Fair for Research Software, but I don't have the ability to do that. Right? I know some people I can talk to, and I've been trying to do this very informally, but I don't really feel like I have the right tools for my university. And I feel like that's the same issue that happens with a lot of organizations, is we can find somebody that's interested, but whether or not they have the ability to be successful depends on factors that aren't within the working group, but are larger ones. And so the two things to me that I think would be interesting would be, what lessons do we have in general about how organizational changes happen? And could we take advantage of these in working groups when we're forming working groups? And then second, to look at the different groups that we have, these examples plus others, and see where has there been successful impact and what are the common things that have led to that impact being successful.
Perfect. Thanks. Victor.
You were there first.
So thank you very much. My name is Cyrus Walter, and I'm from the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics. And my question targets Raphael. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing there, because it's absolutely crucial for our future to educate them and show them what data science is about. But I would like to know a little bit from you, what are the crucial limiting factors, or what would you need from the community for your program to advance?
You mean other than funding?
Yeah. Yes. So funding is one point, and then what kind of funding, what are the sources?
Yeah. So actually, I think that well, funding is like the main thing, but also having the opportunity to reach those universities or any places that actually is willing to do the training, it's kind of hard, because you don't know what is the door that you have to knock on. I mean, we do this 2-week school, so who should we reach? I mean, should we be reaching universities? Should we be reaching, I don't know, specific research labs or anything like that? So defining like this target is for me, it is a little bit hard. Yeah. So sorry. Reaching this these organizations and defining which organizations would benefit from this curriculum is a little bit hard. So, but Lou, if you want to comment on that, or
I was just going to go funding, actually.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I comment? Do you have also replication of what you are doing in order that other institutions can do the same in their institution? Like, yeah. So
Yes.
is this part of the, so if you spread, people will need a little bit of money in each institution?
Yes. So in our case, it's actually, well, as I said, reaching to those organizations is kind of hard, but one thing that also works in our favor is that some of our students, they actually do the arrangement. So there are a few people that went to the school, and then when they come back to their institution, they say, well, this is a good thing. So we are working from within, but reaching from outside, that's the main thing that is hard.
Okay. We've got 3 more questions, and then we're going to have to move on. But yes, over to you.
Okay. Andrew Trelaw, I work for the Australian Research Data Commons, which is the host for the next IDW in 2025. Come to Brisbane. I'm contractually required to say that. I guess my question is building on the question that Hillary asked. And I'm asking it from the point, it's a question for all 4 of you. From the point of view of a recovering technical advisory board co-chair, how can we ensure that the outputs that our working groups and interest groups are producing are more adoptable? Is there something we could do that would make it easier for you or your organizations to adopt them?
So, okay, I'll start. I don't actually think that there's much of an issue in the way that you're saying it, at least in our case. The issue was really one where, if I was going to say one thing that would be helpful from the RDA point of view, it would be for the case, maybe the case study, the initial plan for the working group, to have more concrete discussion of how impact is expected to happen, and have a little bit more guidance and review of that during the process. To me, even though I know that's going to make working groups more difficult a little bit at the beginning, but I think it would pay off in the end.
Yeah, okay.
From my perspective, very helpful at the beginning, it will be something like navigation. And I don't mean navigation on the website, because I know that it's happened, the catalog. I'm really excited to see the new catalog, but the navigation, I told you when I went for the RDA first time, I was overwhelmed with all those working groups, and I would like to join everything. Like it was impossible. So I just need to focus on a few goals I had in mind, like a repository, metadata, then certification, and that'd be very. I think we used to have, or it still have, we have something like a session for newbies, and yes, I think. It's the session on newbies. They supposed to be continued, and they are very helpful.
If I can add something on behalf of RDA France, for example, if you rely on the nodes, and this is something that you do usually, but for example, in RDA France, we have we advocate a lot for cultural steel, for example, and we have deployed something to help people to applicate and have the cultural steel certification. And we do a lot of workshop explaining every criteria and such things. So it needs human resources, and this is what it is about here in RDA, because people help each other and work for not free, but for themselves and for exchanging information and knowledge. But it's a lot of human resources that is needed.
Just to add one other thing really quickly. So NumFocus is an umbrella funder for research software, and the projects that get funded under that tend to think of themselves as a community, and they tend to think of themselves kind of as a software stack that people will often use many pieces of. And so maybe that's another piece that we should be thinking of in RDA more, is how do we package multiple sets of recommendations that work for particular use cases, as opposed to thinking of them all individually.
Thank you. I have two questions, one for Magda and one for everyone. Magda, I'd like to ask you the question, because you seem to be like a little bomb, yeah? You came, you picked it up, you went home, and you did it. There are so many sleeping beauties across Central Eastern Europe. I think that we would need to repeat this story, and my question is to you, that how to do that. Maybe you can be our ambassadors. And then my second question goes to all of you. My second question is that I feel that, Magda, you would not do the repositories as soon as you did with the help of RDA, but how the university top management looks at it, and how the top management of other organizations look at it. Do they feel the efficiency gain, or simply that it was possible to do because RDA made a first step, or do they look at it as a business as usual? So how they feel about the added value that these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these words about bomb. I have to repeat it to my husband. He will be very happy about that. Our authorities actually, we also had to work from the scratch. So we have to convince our authorities that at first we need a data repository. And what also was very helpful, our funding agency in Poland. Roughly at the same time, they got the policy about data management plan, that all the grants, they need to have data management plans. And following that, data needs to be deposited in the trust repositories. They used the words trust repositories that time, and we didn't have any of the trust repositories in Poland. Now we have one. Yay. So, and I think now this certification, it's like a treat for the authorities, because if you are working at the university, I told Rafael that before, authorities, management, top management, they loved certification. We are applying for research excellence certification, HR certification, so many certifications. So now we have we have certified our repository. And one more thing is the team. I have a great team, and the team, I'm a librarian, and you mentioned the word bridge. Our repository is the bridge of data. And also I'm like a bridge between many stakeholders at the university. Recently, we are also a member of RDA as the library. So we are the bridge. I'm going and talking, and because I'm very talkative, I'm talking. So sometimes I don't know if they are tired of me or, yeah, but that's one of the that's one of the way you can get their attention. And then you have your 5 minutes. And with that 5 minutes, you have to introduce the idea of open science, open data, repositories, everything. But sometimes you really have just the 5 minutes. So you have to really be very smart, quick, and you have to use it in the right way.
Just want to add something for 10 seconds. I forgot to say it before. If you want to know how they manage these 3 people to get to their institution to high levels and have their schema of metadata done, you can visit the poster at this number 58.
Okay, so we're moving towards.
I also have a poster, number 91.
There we go. So we're moving towards the end of this panel. Claudia, your last question.
Okay, I'll try to be as fast as that lady who says people get tired when they listen to her. I'm sure you get tired when you listen to me. I was thinking about this adoption and how we could increase adoption through also training, because there are lots of people and institutions that require the appropriate training to understand what it means to adopt the recommendations. And in this sense, your talk about the schools were excellent. And I wonder whether this could be extended to other audiences, not so much graduate students, but for instance, in Latin America, librarians. Librarians all over Brazil are preparing lots of training materials that very often does not have the correct background. And my experience, my particular experience on data management plans is that I discovered that the University of Brighton, or Bath, it starts with a B, together with a South African university, created a game, online game, on how to create a data management plan. And students that are bored by preparing data management plans got immediately engaged in writing data management plans just by, role playing and playing a game. I wonder whether the school could go towards that for students, not librarians, of course. That's a question.
Okay, so you talked about librarians. I think that librarians were a large audience of our first school in South Africa. Yeah, and that was actually quite interesting. So yeah, and we've been discussing not within the schools, but sometimes within the technical advisory board regarding the idea of actually trying to implement a school for adoption. So that would be like selecting a couple of perhaps a set of outputs that could be put together and working through students how they could use those outputs. So perhaps, yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense if within the schools we could include within the curriculum. Well, this is in the final part of the class. Then, well, these are the outputs that relate to this topic that you already saw. So, for instance, we're talking about building DMPs, and at the end of the lesson, we refer the students. We already do that to the outputs that actually relate to this topic. So yeah, and shortly answering your question, yes.
There's always more to be done. But I would like you to join me in thanking our panel for a really excellent set of talks. And, now, to round off this session, we'd like to invite Jill, Shelley, Wim, and Mark on stage. So Mark has not been on stage before. He works as NASA's chief science, Mark works in NASA's chief science data office, helping NASA's 34 repositories coordinate standards and open science guidelines. He's also the joint editor-in-chief of CoData Data Science Journal and the former Secretary General of the RDA. So familiar to pretty much everyone in this room already. So welcome. This is an open panel as well. So if you have questions for them, please do not hesitate to ask. But maybe we can start off by just hearing from all of you representing different parts of the RDA, reflecting a bit on the challenges and opportunities that were raised with the adoption stories.
I can start. I was actually sitting there just feeling so proud of the impact that the organisation has had, and just hearing those adoption stories. I think this is really my favourite part of the week so far. So thank you very much for that. But I guess the other thing I was reflecting on is how fortunate we are in Australia to have an amazing Australian research data commons, and I'm not contractually obligated to say that. And did I mention that IDW will be in Australia, in Brisbane in 2025? And so, you know, if you want to see these little things in real life, I can tell you in real life it's much better, than please do come to Brisbane. But in all seriousness, what I was thinking about is the link between RDA, the ARDC and my organisation. And I don't know if Keith is still here, but hi Keith. A few years ago, Keith came and did the Fair Data Maturity model with my organisation, and that was a fundamental shift for us, and it's led to some really important funding, millions of dollars, which is being put towards research data management within our organisation. So if it wasn't for RDA and the ARDC and implementing that in our region, I wouldn't be seen as the leader that we are within our organisation, but more importantly, we wouldn't be implementing best practice. So I guess that's what I was reflecting on when I was sitting there, how important regional engagement is, and just how fabulous the ARDC is. So thank you for that. And please do come to Brisbane and hear more about their initiatives. Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess my quick comment would be that we should not put unnecessary hurdles that are technological in the process of adoption. So we must work behind the scenes to basically hide all this complexity from the end users, so that it's easier for them to find what they're looking for the purposes of their own requirements and adoption. And on that, I think part of the work that we are contemplating in the next year in RDA Tiger would be to add more granularity to the outputs and recommendations that RDA is producing, so that, as was suggested, we can find recommendations across different outputs and resources that deal with a specific topic. So I think I'll try and take care together with the team and in RDA Tiger, hoping to reduce the knowledge that people need to have about the system to be able to do what they want to do.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I was taking a lot of notes during the presentation, because the reason I'm up here is that Wim and I originally proposed this as a session at SciDataCon, because we didn't want originally for this to just be a report on outputs and how they're being adopted. We wanted to get into some of those questions that I think are arising, like that Dan brought up about organizational change, and to try and get to sort of the deeper issues. And I think a big one, what I really wanted to get at, and I think we need to do more about, and Dan brought this up as well, is that when multiple outputs are used together, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I was really pleased to see that, Magda adopted the core trust seal, but then picked up these other things as well. So, and I think we've seen that several times with RDA, where, I mean, I know in the early days when I was more active, there was, you know, the PID types and the data type registry and the PID kernel, they were all working together. And so maybe we should be thinking about something like a synthesis working group that, you know, could take something to take multiple outputs to another level. And so, and I have 1,000 other observations, but I won't give you them all. But there's several themes that I thought came out from the previous stories. One is keep at it. I'm the co-chair of the Dynamic Data Citation Group, and I'm a new co-chair, and Andy Rauber really deserves all the credit. And it was actually one of the first outputs from RDA, but we still are a very active maintenance group, and we have, you know, most every plenary we have adoption stories, so people can learn from the adoption, and we train people on the adoption. People's reaction to the recommendations tend to be at first, oh my gosh, that's too hard. And then when they get into it, they find out that it's not that hard, and or that actually adopting, you know, 4 of the 14 recommendations actually makes a big difference. And then we also published a big paper that, you know, laid out all sorts of use cases or case studies and lessons learned and stuff. And then another thing is that sometimes we have to recognize that we get great success when RDA disappears. Core Trust Seal has its own identity, and it came from other organizations, and RDA facilitated that. But Core Trust Seal is its own thing now, its own organization. And so maybe it's forgotten that RDA played a key role in developing that, but that in a sense is a success that we're invisible. Scholix is another example. And if you think about it, that's infrastructure is at its best when it's invisible. So I don't think we need to worry too much about waving our flag, except when you have to get money. But that actually invisibility is success. So those are just a few thoughts.
I really like the idea about packaging. The reason I came to RDA, and actually Mark was part of that story, the community within the geosciences, the American Geophysical Union, was really challenged first of all, getting data to be cited in journals, data to the proper repositories. So I don't know if Kirsten Leonard's here, but she's the PI on Coptus, along with Brooks Hansen, who's now retired, and they start Coptus being the coalition on publishing data in the earth sciences. And you know, with the what, yeah, we should cite data, but the how was, oh man, and that's one of the reasons I was actually hired by AGU. You know, help our community get there. Now, my job description looked very different, but that's essentially what I ended up doing. And ESIP, so Susan Shingle-Decker is here from ESIP, the Earth Science Information Partners. That's the US based, although they're now international and growing for the earth scientists and have all the experts there. But they had some of the solutions, but not all of the solutions. So I meet Mark, and Mark's Secretary General at RDA. I'm not even sure I actually met him. I think I was lurking. I think I was like, who's this Mark guy? But what was coming out of the RDA working groups. So I had a hit parade. I had tagged like all these working groups, and you know, and like their earlier speaker, I wanted to go to all of them, and I remember being severely, I won't tell you which one because they've done so much good work. I was severely disappointed when I ran up, finally went to my first RDA, ran up to one of the co-chairs and said, okay, tell me all about what you've done. And they're like, oh, we just got started. I'm like, no, I need it now. But I had a package in my mind on what was going to work. And frankly, it pretty much all came to pass. It all came to pass. And that the love, like, oh my gosh. And I was an adopter. I didn't want to make anything new. I needed to adopt what other people had done and knit it together in a solution for my organization. And that's why one of the reasons I love the organizational assembly so much is because they're figuring out, they may not know it, they're figuring out how to knit these things together. And that's why they're there. They're listening, they're paying attention. And really, I won't plug them anymore. You got the gist.
I just want to emphasize that the work that Shelley did with the project that brought together multiple RDA outputs to accomplish her mission was, I think, an example of this sort of synthesis group that I'm thinking of. And another thing to note about it, though, it was funded. And Shelley is a bomb like Magda. And so the bombs really help. Wasn't my word.
I think we should use champion rather than bombers.
I think there might be other alternatives of vocabulary there. Any questions from the audience? But we're nearing the end of the panel, so I think I'm going to end with the chair's prerogative of another question and a call to arms, because we've had a lot of really great suggestions through the course of all these talks, you know, bundling outputs, doing training on sustainability, thinking, providing more support for co-chairs and so forth. And it's really important, though, that we recognize that we cannot put the onus on the Secretariat, who is already far too busy, or RDA Tiger to suddenly solve all the problems. And we really need to mobilize the community. And while a working group is a great idea, I think the effort needs to be more broad and more pervasive, and everyone in the RDA needs to be pulling at the same oar. So in a word or two or a sentence or two, any ideas about how to get the community fired up and mobilized about it? Vim is already smiling.
Yeah, thanks. So I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is that we need almost like worker groups in RDA, people that are voluntarily providing their time, not to create outputs, but to maintain RDA's infrastructure and fabric. Because as you point out, the Secretariat doesn't have the capacity to do all the things that need to be done. So we need to find a mechanism for making sure that that we maintain the integrity almost of the work being done in RDA, and make sure that it doesn't get lost, that it gets used properly, that it gets adopted. So it's just an initial thinking about this idea of, let's say, the worker bees of RDA to mobilize them.
And just to be clear, in my suggestion of a synthesis group, I'm not thinking the Secretariat could do that.
No.
So that would be the community.
Yes, definitely.
I really like Dan's suggestion about really interrogating what has and hasn't worked and being able to scale that across our groups. I think that was such an excellent suggestion, and I see that as a way of not putting too much load on the Secretariat.
I think I would give you all a caution. We talked about laying on maybe some more thinking that a working group has to have at the beginning. It is really hard. If you don't know the RDA way, a new person to RDA will have an incredible challenge having a successful working group. So I think we just need to take a little care. We want them to be successful, and maybe the first 18 months is a small thing and then a larger thing. You may not adopt the first thing coming out. It may be the second or third, but I think we have to watch the new person coming in. You know, the experience of, oh my gosh, this is so much, I'm overwhelmed. It's real. It's real. We have pathways. We have, you know, beginners group. We want more people to come. We have potentially 14,000, almost 14,000 members. They're not in this room. So where'd they go? Did they get scared? So we just have to remember that there's, you know, our expert teams and the, oh my gosh, we want them to be expert teams, and yes to everything. I love the synthesis idea.
Brilliant. Well, that's lots to think about, and hopefully the council can provide some thinking about how to really get the community working and doing what it needs to do in order to make this a success. But we are at time now, and I know that we have some amazing posters outside, so I don't want to take time away from them by keeping you in this room. So please join me in thanking our speakers again for a great session.